Homeschooling is hundreds of years old, and here's what its history teaches us about learning through play. This is by Rachel Bryant Davies, Lecturer of Comprehensive Literature, Queen Mary University of London in the UK, on the conversation. Now, one of our beloved presidents, Abraham Lincoln, was even homeschooled by his stepmother, and he turned out to be a lawyer and a president. Now, into this article we go. The UK government's COVID recovery plans for schools have been criticized for prioritizing learning over well-being. Education specialists routinely extol the benefit sports, creative activities, and the performing arts can bring to children. It's particularly relevant in light of the disruptions to schooling and childhood that COVID has wrought. Storytelling has emerged as a powerful tool for children to process the crisis. COVID stories have encompassed heroism, resilience, myth, and fable, entertaining and educating simultaneously. Historical home learning shows that there need be no dichotomy between play, the improved well-being, and learning to satisfy educational needs. As my research into educational literature from the 18th and 20th century shows, learning through play is an age-old concept. Historical perspectives: for children aged between 5 and 10, attending formal school only became compulsory with the Elementary Education Act of 1880, but before that, charitable and religious organizations had provided basic education. Grammar schools theoretically were open to all, but children from poorer families mostly worked, and for those who studied, home was school. The main educational format promoted in the 18th century children's books in Britain and Europe was domestic instruction, that is, homeschooling. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Written in script form, they generally featured idealized educational conversations between the mother and her children, sometimes involving fathers or other family members or visitors. Anna Letitia Barrow's Lessons for Children aged 2 to 3, published in 1778, is arguably the earliest example. It is a reading primer featuring simple domestic questions and answers in large print. Charles, what are eyes for? To see with, is an example. Now, in other books, this type of dialogue was used to explore chemistry, history, and geography. For example, the family in Priscilla Wakefield's 1794 book, Mental Improvement, or The Beauties and Wonders of Nature and Art, in a series of instructive conversations, discusses the challenges involved in tea and chocolate cultivation. The conversations lead into a discussion about character perfection, historically illustrated with an anecdote about the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. This style of learning revolved around having fun. While the context was usually an idealized middle-class home, where parents and siblings alike were at leisure to converse or read aloud, the key message was more widely relatable. It was about using everyday objects, impromptu homemade games and crafts, and informal chat as the main tools for learning. Magazines encouraged children to imagine their hobby horses as the Trojan horse or to play at Noah's Ark in their kitchen sinks. They used a geological explanation of coal to describe the 19th century archaeological excavation of Troy, Homer's mythical city. Though Greek and Latin were so often the bastions of a stereotypically elite education, my findings show how the classics were gamified for audiences of different ages and social backgrounds. They were toys primarily marked at middle and upper class families, but also magazines featuring stories of girls learning Greek at grammar school, reading lists for auto-dictates, and popular comic and circus performances. What's more, toy theaters repackaged the classics as boisterous home entertainment. Between 1750 and 1914, puzzles, toys, board and card games, magazines, and community plays were all used for educational purposes. And the power of storytelling. Storytelling was just as important as dialogue. In their 6-volume collection, Evenings at Home, 1792 to 1796, Barbeau and her brother John Aiken explained that the characters of their story, the fictional Fairborn family, had many children. Some were educated at school and some at home by their parents. Frequent visitors would contribute stories to the family library as well, to be enjoyed on holidays. Parents today could well struggle to know what to make of many of these stories. They both perpetuate offensive content, racist account of traveling the globe, and incorporate radical ideas, pacifism, women's contradictory position as political disenfranchisement educators. Ancient history and fable were told from an anti-war perspective, as later in Maria Hack, Grecian Stories, 1819, which also condemned ancient slavery and celebrated abolition. Historical magazines were a cheaper format through which many more children encountered classic mythology and archaeology or experienced fictional Latin lessons that could have learned classics at schools. They are a major, though underappreciated part of the long tradition of reading classical myth in childhood. Stories often featured ancient heroes and heroines as role models for boys and for girls to promote cultural expectations. Examples include contentious figures such as the Roman general Marius or British Queen Boadicea. Looking back at this playful learning from the past can help us move forward more confidently to the real benefit of children, in particular dissolving any perceived boundaries between play and learning, between creative activities and curriculum, should lift some stress from parents and teachers. This is on the Conversation Creative Commons. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.